House of the Dragon has taken the concept of Easter eggs to a whole new level with an Easter egg, which is quite literally an egg. So in today's video, let's see what this surprise is, but before we get into that, this video will be full of spoilers based on Fire and Blood, so beware. And we'll include the source material for House of the Dragon written by George R.R. Martin. First of all, Dreamfyre Dragon Egg in House of the Dragon is a huge Easter egg. The egg was a major topic of discussion in House of the Dragon's second episode when we learned that Daemon Targaryen had stolen an egg from a dragon named Dreamfyre, taken it to Dragonstone, and intended to use it for his and Mysaria's future child. Later though, it turns out that Mysaria wasn't actually pregnant, and Daemon was just doing the Westeros version of trolling everyone for attention. But when Rhaenyra learned that the egg was the exact same one she had picked out for her baby brother, who had passed away in his infancy at the end of episode 1, she flew to Dragonstone to retrieve it. There's a bunch of pre-House of the Dragon info to go over when it comes to Dreamfyre, all of which is ancient history. According to Fire and Blood, Dreamfyre was a female dragon who bonded with Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Rhaenyra's great-grandfather's sister, which she was around 12. Dreamfyre was described as a pale blue, slender female dragon with silvery markings who had produced 2 clutches of eggs. Long story short, Princess Rhaenyra's dad was king, then he died, leading her less than friendly uncle Maegor to take over the throne, and she had to flee to safety. Then Rhaenyra's husband Aegon went to war with her uncle, Aegon died, and she once again had to run with Dreamfyre right by her side. Rhaenyra eventually ended up having to marry Maegor in a wedding ceremony with 2 other brides, but after his death, she and Dreamfyre moved to Dragonstone. Here, Dreamfyre spent her time laying a bunch of eggs that everyone wanted to buy/steal, and there you have it. So what exactly is Dreamfyre's role in House of the Dragon? The dragon story didn't end here though. After Rhaenyra's death, Dreamfyre was ridden by Princess Helena. Helena was the only daughter of King Viserys and Alicent Hightower, who ended up marrying her brother Aegon II Targaryen. Aegon is crowned king when Viserys eventually dies, and a battle for succession and the Dance of the Dragons begins. Helena dies too eventually, and Dreamfyre dies in a blaze of glory during the storming of Dragon's Pit. Dreamfyre laid a lot of eggs in her time, including 3 that were stolen from Rhaenyra Targaryen by a woman named Alyssa Farman. We don't have any confirmation so far, but there is a theory that these eggs are the ones that ended up in Daenerys Targaryen's hands, later becoming none other than Drogo, Viserion, and Rhaegal, the infamous dragons from Game of Thrones. Speaking of Easter eggs, what about the incest plotline in House of the Dragon? Despite being bitter about the end of Game of Thrones, we're now in a fully committed and somewhat toxic relationship with House of the Dragon. So much so that we went straight to the source material to detect a major relationship in the show. Specifically, we know what will happen between Daemon and Rhaenyra Targaryen, and it's a bit of a doozy of a plotline. Before we go any further, it should obviously be mentioned that massive spoilers for House of the Dragon are ahead, so you have been warned. If you watch that scene where Daemon gives Rhaenyra a necklace and sense some incest vibes between the two, we're here to confirm your suspicions. Turns out Rhaenyra and Daemon are in fact endgame, meaning they have a tense relationship, eventually hook up and get married. This is pretty significant from a power play perspective, considering they both want the throne, and their Targaryen union is almost sure to guarantee that happens, even though Alicent Hightower's children will end up inevitably staking their claim. Among the many things, we're asked to suspend our disbelief over in Martin's world in the fact that incest isn't exactly frowned upon. Yeah, Jaime and Cersei Lannister's relationship got a ton of side eyes on Game of Thrones, but when Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen were straight up aunt and nephew, no one seemed to bat an eye. And during the years House of the Dragon is set in, Targaryens intermarrying with each other is kind of like their job. So do Rhaenyra and Daemon end up together? In other words, incest isn't unusual in this world, and apparently we're all supposed to get on board. In fact, the show made it abundantly clear in episode 3 when the Hand of the King Otto suggested that Rhaenyra marry her half-brother Prince Aegon. King Viserys was shocked at the idea, but only because of their age difference and not because they were related. Daemon was obviously already married when House of the Dragon began, but that doesn't mean he's faithful. According to Fire and Blood, Daemon returned to court post-Crab Feeder drama and declared himself the king of the Narrow Sea, which King Viserys was somehow fine with. At this point, he started spending long hours in Rhaenyra's company. As per Fire and Blood, there are 2 rumors surrounding their relationship. One is that Daemon seduced and claimed her maidenhood, but the king didn't let them marry because Daemon already had a wife. The other, even more scandalous rumor was that Rhaenyra actually had a thing for Sir Christian Cole, so Daemon taught her how to make him see her as a woman, which involved kissing lessons between the two. The matter of fact is that these two have a long history, but they must go through a few relationships first before marrying each other. After Daemon's first wife eventually dies, he gets together with Laena Velaryon, initially the bride of King Viserys. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra marries Leonor Velaryon, Lyanna's brother. Leonor and Lyanna end up dying in the same year, giving Rhaenyra and Daemon the opportunity to waste no time and get married themselves. And now for some other related news. Firstly, what do we know about the sea snake Corlys Velaryon? Set 300 years before the bloody events of the original series, House of the Dragon gets personal with ancient families of Westeros, including the old school Targaryens. But like any good fantasy series, it doesn't center around just one family. We're seeing some damn good supporting characters too. Enter the ever-dashing Corlys Velaryon, played by Steve Toussaint, also known throughout Westeros as the Sea Snake. He's a legend in the series and has personal ties to the Targaryens, but let's be honest, who doesn't have ties to them in the show? And judging by what we've seen of the Sea Snake, there's definitely more than what meets the eye with this character. As the current head of the House Velaryon, Corlys' family, an old and ancient one in Westeros, with some saying that they predate even the noble Targaryens. As you've probably noticed, the Sea Snake's hair is roughly also the same shade of silver as the Targaryens. And that's likely because they're all of Velaryon descent, meaning that they have similar physical appearances, whether it be violet-colored eyes or their hair color. Next, there's a spoiler in House of the Dragon opening credits. If you didn't get full-body shivers from the minute of Game of Thrones theme came on in the opening credits of House of the Dragon, you're lying. Speaking of the opening credits, the time has come to break them down. Obviously, the intro pretty clearly depicts a bloodline which maps out the Targaryen family tree, and while we can't pretend to be an expert on all things fire and blood, the good news is that there are a ton of people on Reddit who have matched each symbol in the intro to its corresponding Targaryen, starting with Aegon and leading all the way to Rhaenyra. And speaking of Rhaenyra's symbol, it happens to be a pretty big spoiler for what eventually goes down on the show. If Rhaenyra's symbol looks sort of familiar, it's because it's the exact same design that's on the necklace given to her by Daemon during episode 1. This is important because Daemon and Rhaenyra do end up getting married down the line, and as we know from Game of Thrones, incest wasn't exactly frowned upon by the Targaryen court, so that's it. Lastly, George R.R. Martin still doesn't like the way Game of Thrones ended. Very few things in pop culture have been as universally loved as the early seasons of Game of Thrones, or as universally despised as the way it ended. If you're one of the many GOT fans who felt personally victimized by the series finale, then you're not alone, friend. The Game of Thrones ending disappointment society has had some high-profile members. Emilia Clarke is low-key in the club, and George R.R. Martin, the author, also apparently had thoughts about some of the creative decisions that were made in the OG show's final season. The TV show officially passed the books after season 5, meaning that the final 3 seasons didn't have direct material to adapt from. And that's a wrap for this video. What did you think of the Dreamfyre dragon egg in the House of the Dragon, and do you think it's a huge Easter egg? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching, we'll see you in the next one.